Now, if I ever decide to buy a faction carrier, it is most likely going to be the Astarte. This ship, along with the other 3 faction carriers, has been buffed in one of the last big updates, and it should perform much better now. After all of the versatile assault ships are very similar to super carriers. Now, I mean, I like to call them mini super carriers because they are very close to them stats-wise. Now, it will be time to see how will this ship perform in Wormhole space, or more specifically, how will the Astarte perform in the Cobalt Edge region. Now, one of the necessities of the Cobalt Edge systems, or basically any wormhole system, is to have scanners. Now, the ship has 5 minimum slots with a different rig layout. Right now have the Stir Bay installed, which gives me a bit more lightweight ship slots, but it does sacrifice 1 medium slots. So right now I have 4, but the ship has 5 by default, which is honestly fantastic. This ship really needed that 5th slot. After all, Blood Raiders kind of required to have more than 4 slots in order to work properly. Now, as for the rigs here, as we have seen with the Cyan carrier last time, tank is important, and since since this ship is going to be in unknown space, having tank is definitely important, and I don't really recommend that you go in Cobalt Edge with something completely glass unless it is a cloaky ship. Big ships, battleships, battlecruisers, some cruisers, and of course capitals should have some form of tank, because you are going to be going into a system, or into systems, or into regions that have no local, so you can't really rely on local to see who is around. So you kind of have to have some form of tank, and of course the scanners. And I'll come to the scanners a bit later. There's something that I have to show you with the scanners that I personally don't really like, but it is basically the only solution that we have at the moment. As for the modules here, I will go with something balanced between tank and DPS. Basically very similar to what I've done on the Cyan carrier, but since this is a armor tank ship, and since the ship is technically a bit more expensive on the market and a bit more expensive when you buy it, although the Cyan carrier has a much larger insurance price. Kind of funny how the Cyan carrier is actually costing a lot more when you lose it than the Astarte. The Astarte is like 250 billion. You know, the Cyan carrier rolls up to 600 billion, which is kind of hilarious, but the Astarte costs like much more, my apologies, much more to buy. I think it's like 100 billion to buy one of these ships. Well, at least that was the last time I checked the price, that was like 100 billion. But you know, who knows? Might be different now. So it's about 3 million hit points, almost 3.1 million hit points. And I'll be using the new Aerospace tag, the Implant. After all, this is the new popular Implant, and I want to show you what all of these ships can do with this ship. Now I'm looking for a damage control general unit, and I'll show you a very interesting little, well, not exactly a trick, but you can enhance your tank, passive tank, with the general units by using the damage control unit. That will give you plus 18% extra resistance on the damage control. And now from 8.86 it's up to 10.2% on all damage types, but it does reduce your activation, the active time of the damage control. But this type of damage control isn't really meant to be used in a active way. This is more for a passive build, for passive resistance. But you also have the other unit that does give you a more active duration time, but it does reduce the overall passive resistance on the damage control. And the module layout is actually pretty clean on the Astarte. That's what I like about this ship. It's very easy to just set up the modules, and yeah, that looks nice. And all of the lightweight ships are also in their place. So 16,000 DPS, not bad. 4.7 million hit points, and 10, 78, 75, and 73%. Now the tank can definitely be improved, and you also have the carrier special module that it will increase your DPS and tank. Now we have 20,000 DPS and 5.9 million hit points. A bit more resistance, and the panic button, of course, available with the damage 29 million hit points 96, 97, 96, and 96. Of course, this fact, because of the general limit, is going to be very short, so only exclusively in panic situations, in crucial moments, should the damage control be
Docking
used.
request accepted.
Now, one thing that I kind of don't really like is the fact that I don't have above 80% resistance on all damage types with my current rig layout. So I could technically replace one of my lightweight ship burst adapter rigs for another armor rig, which would be maybe a good idea, since this thing already has some fantastic DPS, and the implant will give you a lot of DPS by default. Although, is it really necessary to go with another with integrations? Well, not exactly. I mean, this current build already looks pretty good, and the ships are tanky by default. They have received a buff on the overall hit points, which is, I would say, pretty good, since these ships are meant to be tanky, and they're technically, resistance-wise, tankier than dreadnoughts, but they lack the repairability from the dreadnoughts. So they can take a lot of hits, but if you want to use them in a more active way like a dreadnought, you probably will have to have a force auxiliary around you so that it can maintain your shield or armor depending on what you want to do with the ship. In this case, the Astarte is a armor tank, since it does have a bonus on armor plates, so this ship is meant to be used as a armor tank. Meanwhile, the other Bloodedest can technically be a shield or armor tank, but that depends on your skill, depends on what type of ship you want to fly, and things like that. And well, welcome to Cobalt Edge. I jumped through the wormhole, I warped to my save spot, and now let me go and see. We have a way secret checkpoint that's very similar to Inquisitor or a Scout anomaly. It will be fun to check out the way secret checkpoint. It should be difficult, should be a bit more difficult than a large anomaly, we'll see. And we have a signal. Let's see. Now, speaking of the scanners, the scanner performance on the Astarte is horrendous. And it is, reconnaissance outpost relics. Okay, that's going to be fun to check out. We'll be using the Nestor for that one, but first,
Warp drive active.
we will go and run that way sticker checkpoint just to show you what it looks like and to show you how the ship performs. Now, scanners. Using scanners on capitals is not something I personally really like, because I prefer to have an alt. I think having an alt that is going to be specifically for scanning is better than having the scanners on this thing, because the scanner performance is going to be horrendous, and you can't really you technically use one scanner. The red scanner can find the big wormhole, and it can also scan down ships, but you will not be able to scan down smaller ships like interceptors and frigates, and perhaps even cruisers, but I think you might be able to find cruisers with the red scanner. But small wormholes, even if you can find them, even if you can't find them, you cannot pass through the small wormhole with a capital. The small wormholes are limited to certain ship sizes, so you can't really go with this thing through a small wormhole, so you're only limited to a large one. And the small ones are safer than the large ones, because the large ones are usually camped, usually heavily camped, and if it happens that a versatile assault ship comes in, that versatile assault ship is not coming out alive, because everyone will just wake up, log in, and they'll just go and do everything they can to catch one of these ships, if they can find it in the wormhole or in the bridge space between the systems. Since when you go through the wormhole, you have that little area that I like to call the bridge system, that is used to pass to the next system. In any case, let's see how this thing will perform. Although it can find combat sites, it can find most of the stuff, most of the capital stuff you can scan down with this thing, but you can't really scan on the very small stuff, and the very small stuff is definitely very valuable and very important. Well, that's interesting. That's a very interesting little area. Okay, let's roll.
We
now.
are under attack.
The DPS on the Astarte, as we could see, is very similar to the DPS on the Vazago and similar to the DPS on the villain. The
We're
aerospace
being
stack, the
scrambled.
implant, is pretty solid for all of the drones that I've tested so far, and even good for fighters as well as lightweight ships. Now, the active mode, the active mode of the implant is, well, it's interesting to say the least. I know that it does reduce the speed, and it is kind of meant to be used for a vast majority of drones. I mean, perfect for sentries. It does extend the range, which is, always welcomed. It does extend the range, but it does also slow down your fighters. And if you are at, let's say, close distance from the ships, like I am right now here, if your carrier is built for brawling, then you can basically warp at zero to the. You can warp at zero to the mission, and you can use the active mode of the implant because it will basically kind of simulate your fighters or drones to behave like sentries, because they'll be very slow. Basically, they'll be so slow that their speed is negligible, and it is the difference between their speed with the implant active and with sentry. It's basically like non-existent. They are basically stationary. So you can technically do that, warp at zero and just use the implant that way. Can be technically very good for AFK, if you like to run AFK missions or encounters or stuff like that, but I wouldn't recommend that you AFK with a carrier. That's a very, very, very bad idea.
Enemy ships detected.
And definitely, please don't AFK any ship in Cobalt
We're
Edge.
under
That's
attack.
just a death sentence, honestly. Just don't AFK. I mean, don't AFK anywhere. Maybe high sec with snipers. I can understand, like, if you AFK with snipers in high sec with battleships, that's okay. But with carriers, no, it's just not a good idea. Although I have seen our alliance, well, soon to be X-Alliance, has lost a super carrier because the super carrier pilot actually fell asleep. And I think they fell asleep, although I also heard that they have been AFK. So, yikes. That's a expensive. Imagine, basically, I mean, I've heard different price values for price values, the actual real money value of supercarriers. Some say 8,000 USD. I've heard 10,000 USD. Some say 7.5 thousand USD. I have no idea how much these ships cost, but imagine that it's basically like falling asleep while driving a car and basically crashing it. That's what I would feel like if I ever lost one of these supercarriers, because they're expensive. And yeah, that's definitely one very expensive pixel ship. I guess, I don't know. Pixels becoming expensive, that's for sure. I wonder how much a Titan will cost. I think Titans will be 20,000 USD. Oh my god, I don't know. I don't even want to imagine how much they will cost in real currency. That's going to be scary. And you know damn well someone is going to be falling asleep through low sec with it, and it will die to an Astro or something. That's gonna be funny. Already, its fate already sealed. That's going to be funny to see. But yeah, expensive boats, that's for sure. And how much would a versatile assault ship cost? I have no idea. I think like 2,000 USD or something, which is still expensive. I mean, for me, it is expensive. For me, it is very, very expensive. That's how much my car costs, basically. So yeah. But its performance is really good. Now, this ship has a better bonus on turrets than on missiles. So I'm currently using all of the lightweight ships that are using turrets. And I have been asked that question: why do I prefer the turrets over the missiles? Well, it mostly depends on the ship's skill. For example, the Anaconda is performing much better with missiles than with turrets. So on the Anaconda, I will use bombers or missile destroyers. The villain, Vazago, and Astarte have a very nice bonus on turrets, and with the case of the Vazago, It has also
Enemy
a very
ships
nice bonus
detected.
on missiles. Basically, the Veslav has a 10% bonus on turrets and
We're
10% bonus
under
on missiles.
attack.
Meanwhile, the other two, the Astarte and the Villain, have a 10% bonus on turrets per skill level, of course, and a 7.5% bonus on missiles, which means technically you get higher paper DPS with turrets. Of course, paper DPS isn't everything, and there are some instances and some cases where having the missiles and having the bombers actually is a much better idea. I like to say that the bombers are really good against battleships and larger ships, while the destroyers can be good against battleships and below. Of course, you can use them against cannons as well, but the bombers will just do more damage because they just have more paper DPS with the torpedo launchers, and of course they are kind of designed to shoot at big ships. So after all, I mean, in the end, it works. All the lightweight ships work really well. It depends on the situation, depends on the ship, on the skills, and so on. In some cases, if you have better skills for missiles, for small missiles, then having the missile lightweight ships would probably be a better idea than to have the third ones, because it's a good chance that you will have higher DPS despite of the skills, despite of the ship skill per level. So there's really a lot of things to include when we compare all the lightweight ships. But in most cases, in my perspective here, from my experience, I like to use the third lightweight ships. They simply do a lot of damage, and overall their performance is very nice. The only I would say weapon system that is kind of weird, that behaves in a weird way, are the decomposers, the red tail hawks. Now thankfully you can fit the red tail hawks on the versatile assault ships. The red tail hawks are classified as ordinary fighters, and you can only fit them on the classic fighters, on the classic carriers, and technically you can fit them on super carriers as well, since they're classified as light fighters, and they're the only fighter system, weapon system that I kind of looked at, and I came to the conclusion that it's most likely a better cost-effective way to just get the normal fighters instead of the red tail hawks, because of the way how the decomposers work. I mean, don't get me wrong, they have some terrifying paper DPS, but there are a lot of other aspects that you have to account for, and they're much more difficult to use than the ordinary fighters. So that would basically be how the red tail hawks seem to work so far. They're good, but I'm not really sure if they're justifying their price on the market, which is ridiculous. I don't know, I think like 10 billion for one red tail hawk. I don't know. I've seen some ridiculous numbers. Might be more, might be less, but yeah, they're expensive and they are rare. Now, one thing I forgot to mention here: this way secret checkpoint has boxes, and we will be opening those boxes. Now, interesting thing, there is no acceleration gate, and not very sure if this is going to be like a scout or inquisitor. I think this might be very similar to a scout anomaly. In any case, when this last ship is killed, I'll dock and change the ship to an Esther so I can quickly loot everything, and then we will be paying a visit to that exploration site. Now, this right here is kind of classified as a combat site, and I'm not really sure when they changed that. I mean, you used to have to scan down the checkpoints in the early days of Cobalt Edge in the game, and when I went in Cobalt Edge for the first time, I found a lot of checkpoints. So technically, these were scannable combat sites, and I don't know when they changed that in order for them to appear normally, but I really liked the idea of them being scannable combat sites. It's something that I personally liked, and a lot of other players liked, but for some reason they made them very similar to the ordinary scout or inquisitors. But we will see. I mean, who knows what kind of loot I'll get from that from that from those boxes there. Last time I said high risk, high reward, right? And I got a bunch of metal scraps. Oh, the irony! Oh, the irony! But I also got a expensive drone, which can be built. I mean, the loot in general, for how little time I'm spending here, I would say the loot is actually really good.
Active.
Of course, there is a lot of other things to include, but I would say the loot in general seem to be pretty solid. Can't really complain about it. Can't really complain about it. Although, when you include the hassle that it takes to actually get here, I mean, it does feel like you're going into a wormhole space. Although it's not exactly wormhole space, but technically it is. Technically, but not exactly. But you know, very excited for the actual wormhole space, though. It's going to be my new home for sure. And this is kind of me practicing on time, kind of me preparing for actual wormhole space, since I like to prepare myself for new upcoming stuff, and I have the chance to do so I will. Alright, let's go after the closest box. So relic debris, relic wreck, relic ruin, relic wreck, relic debris, and relic scraps. Alright, no other signal in the system. Well, actually there is one signal in the system, so that's nice. The Nestor is a fantastic ship for the job, by the way, and I mean, I don't know, I already had a Nestor, I sold it for a very good price. Oh my god, when I remember how much East I got from that thing, it was like 24 billion or something, that I sold that thing expensive. I really did. And very curious to see what the Cabal Expanse will be. I said that a million times probably by now, but that Cabal Expanse makes me very curious because there isn't much info on it available right now. Well, we already know some things about it, but nothing new. Basically what I talked about before, that's the latest even now. But by the looks of it, it might actually be like abyssal space and the needle jacks. So no idea what ship will be the best for. I mean, best. Every ship in every class would probably have some champions that, well, I say champion, not champions, but we'll probably have meta ships that are just going to, oh look, yeah, Assault Valkyrie, nice. That's pretty good loot there. Well, pretty good. I got a Assault Valkyrie blueprint. I'm not going to say no to that. Can be expensive. Can be expensive. But technically, I believe the Gila, Phantasm, Fiend are going to be the most popular ships for the Cabal Expanse, since for Cabal Expanse, based on what we have seen so far, I think tank is going to be very important. Tanky ships are going to be very important for the job, and it really feels like the early days of Abyssal Space in EVE Online, so I'll have a lot of different builds to play around with, that's for sure, and probably going to be fun. Alright, small... Now that little module there can cost up to 1 billion on the market, if built. The shield generators are ridiculously expensive. So maybe I made about 1 billion right now out of this little well, combat site. Of course, have to build a module and similar, but yeah, and I got a remote rig, which I believe is also quite pricey since it is rare. Well, time to check out that reconnaissance outpost relic site. I have no idea if it's a combat site or if it's a exploration site. We are about to find out.
Warp drive
Overall,
active.
not bad. Definitely can get some good ISK out of these blueprints, since they are very rare. Maybe about we're looking at 2-3 billion, maybe 4 billion or something, if everything is built. I'm not really up to date with the pricing of the new modules. Last time I checked, they were ridiculously expensive, so I am basing my my estimates on that, but we will see. Definitely some interesting loot, that's for sure. And now, okay, we have 3 boxes and no enemies. Okay, so this is a classic exploration site. Alright, fair enough. Classical exploration site. So let's lock everything on and let's go for the nearest box. Now they require they require a high level scanner. The Nestor should analyzer, my apologies, high level analyzer, and the Nestor should tick all the boxes when it comes to that. So I'm not really worried about. Actually, you know what? I don't know. I know my luck is non-existent, so I might even blow up some boxes. Hasn't happened in a very long time. So yeah, okay. Opened first one, didn't drop anything spectacular. My friend that found like 60 billion in Cobalt Edge in like a day saw the last video and they had a good time. They had a good laugh. And they actually showed me the screenshots of the loot. Some juicy stuff can drop here, that's for sure. But if you have no luck like me, well, yeah, it might be a bit different. I like how the the sleeper core on this thing looks awesome. I love the sleeper core on the Nestor, it looks fantastic. I mean, just look at this thing. It's probably one of the better looking ships in the game. I mean, the Nestor, the Space Blender, has always been a very attractive ship. I love it. And this is the only ship that I don't have a kill of. I've killed every single ship in the game, every single sub capital ship in the game basically, but I haven't killed the Nestor. That's the only thing that I'm missing. Thousands and thousands of kills, but no Nestor. I did have the chance to shoot a bunch of them, but I didn't get a kill unfortunately, so yeah, I guess it's fine though. And of course, I blew up the box. I have foreshadowed that. Told you that's about to happen. And you can place guesses. How much did I destroy in that box? Well, probably a couple billion. Usually how it goes. Usually the box that I destroy is the most valuable box. That's just how it goes. I know that for a fact because that's how things worked in EVE Online. When you scan the contents of the box, you see juicy stuff. Of course, you fail the decoding, and yeah, you blew up a couple billion ISK just like that. But you open the other crap boxes without a problem, but the important box just blows up. That's just how it goes. And see that? See that? Open immediately. I love it. Anyway, well, that was interesting. Definitely. I mean, the anomalies here are different. That's for sure. And the checkpoints aren't that difficult, I would say. Doable with a battleship, or maybe even with a long-range kite cruiser or long-range battle cruiser. The long range seems to be kind of the way to go in Cobalt Edge, unless you have a very hefty tank. And overall, I mean, I'm pretty satisfied with the loot. This is me being here, the second day of me being here, so I'm definitely going to be showing you everything I find and everything I get from Cobalt Edge, so we can basically see what's the value of what we can find here. Although I already seen a bunch of screenshots that my friends found. Yeah, it is definitely, from what I've seen, it is definitely worth it. So, but we will see. I'll definitely creep around the Cobalt Edge systems a bit more, since I found this little region to be very interesting. Alright, well, with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed. If you would like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and as always, I'll see you next time.